So, what is Old Bay seasoning anyway? Well, real Marylanders don't just season their crabs with Old Bay. The orange spice blend is, honestly, all over their popcorn, around the rim of every quality Bloody Mary, and, believe it or not, occasionally mixed into their ice cream. Some real devotees even carry a container in their purses. In other words, Old Bay seasoning is a major point of pride for those who live in the Old Line State. But where did it come from? And, what spices are actually in it? Want to uncover more Maryland food secrets? Hit that subscribe button and join us for the next delicious discovery. Real Marylanders don't just season their crabs with Old Bay. The orange spice blend is all over their popcorn, around the rim of every quality Bloody Mary, and sometimes even mixed into their ice cream. Some devotees even carry a container in their purses. In other words, Old Bay seasoning is a major point of pride for those who live in the Old Line State. But where did it come from, and what spices are actually in it? The origins of Old Bay go back to Germany during the 1930s, when the rise of Nazism prompted Jewish spice merchant Gustav Brun to obtain a visa, so he, his wife Bianca, and their two young children could immigrate to the United States. Leaving Germany wasn't easy. On the night of November 9, 1938, the Nazis launched what's known as Kristallnacht, a series of brutal pogroms in which they destroyed Jewish homes and establishments across Germany, Austria, and other German-occupied territory. Brun was among some 30,000 men that Nazis arrested and imprisoned in concentration camps. He spent 2 weeks in Buchenwald before his family was able to bail him out, at great cost, and they sailed to America days later. After arriving in Baltimore, Maryland, where Brun's uncle lived, Brun first found work at a sausage factory, and then, eventually, at spice manufacturer McCormick & Company. The gig didn't last. Brun was let go within just a few days, which he attributed in a 1980 interview to his less than stellar English language skills, though Brun's son Ralph recalled that his father was fired for being Jewish. Armed with a small spice mill he'd carted all the way from Germany, Brun struck out on his own and founded the Baltimore Spice Company in a rented second-floor space right across from a fish market. As his business started to flourish, Brun wondered how he could service the seafood merchants, who all had their own secret recipes for seafood spice blends. "I thought I could make a better seasoning for the seafood people," Brun said. To thwart copycats, he made sure to populate his recipe with surprising ingredients. To his amazement, those minor things he put in there, the most unlikely things, including cinnamon and nutmeg and cloves and all kinds of stuff that had nothing to do with crabs at all, gave a background bouquet that he couldn't have anticipated. Ralph Brun told Jewish Times in 2018, "Old Bay per se was almost an accident." An advertising pal of Brun's came up with the name, a nod to the Old Bay line, a Chesapeake Bay-based steamship line. Old Bay seasoning wasn't an immediate success among Brun's target consumers, most of whom were too attached to their own spice blends to shell out for something new. But once they realized one wholesaler's Old Bay-covered crabs were selling better than ever before, they quickly changed their tune. That was in the early 1940s. As the 20th century progressed, Old Bay became a culinary cornerstone of the entire Chesapeake Bay region. The Bruns sold the Baltimore Spice Company in the mid-1980s, and in 1990 the Old Bay brand was acquired by none other than McCormick, which still sells the beloved spice today. So what exactly is in Old Bay's seasoning? Well, McCormick's exact recipe for Old Bay is a secret. The company's website currently only lists celery salt, which is salt and celery seed, spices including red pepper and black pepper, and paprika as its ingredients. But honestly, it wasn't always so mysterious. If you look at an archived version of the Old Bay website from 2009, it actually lists celery salt, spices like mustard, red pepper, black pepper, bay leaves, cloves, allspice, also called pimento, ginger, mace, cardamom, cinnamon, and paprika. That breakdown is pretty close to what you'd find printed on Old Bay tins from around 1950: celery salt, pepper, mustard, pimento, cloves, laurel leaves, mace, cardamom, ginger, cassia, paprika, and even monosodium glutamate. If you dig a little further into the archives, you'll actually find a pretty comprehensive portrait of what might have been in the original Old Bay blend. Back in 1945, Brun filed a trademark application for the phrase Old Bay as a seasoning for meat, seafood, and other food products. And, get this, also listed in the filing are a whopping 39 ingredients that make up Old Bay itself, from mixed pickle spice to ground marjoram. Here's what was included: ground allspice, whole allspice, bay leaves, mixed pickle spice, celery salt, onion powder, ground sage, celery seed, ground mace, paprika, ground thyme, ground black pepper, cayenne pepper, garlic salt, ground red pepper, ground mustard, onion salt, mustard seed, curry powder, ground turmeric, ground white pepper, ground marjoram, garlic powder, cardamom, chili powder, whole black pepper, poppy seed, dry parsley, onion flakes, garlic flakes, cumin seed, caraway seed, ground cloves, whole cinnamon, whole nutmeg, and ground ginger. So, as for how Old Bay's inventor would feel about Marylander's commitment to sprinkling the seasoning on, well, just about every dish under the sun, there's actually a pretty good chance he'd totally applaud the creativity. In that trademark filing, Brun even mentioned cakes, pumpkin pie, and apple butter as possible uses for Old Bay.